In my last video, I said Xylo doesn't fight for recognition, that he isn't trying to become a hero, that he's just surviving a system that doesn't want heroes to last. Episode 6 makes that harder to believe, because when the fortress is on the verge of collapsing, when Venetim is underground begging them not to retreat because he doesn't want to die, when the battle pushes Xylo right to the edge of defeat, he admits something. He says he feels like the goddesses, not because he's noble, not because he believes in their ideals, but because he wants to be recognized as something valuable in this broken world. And that's different. That's not just survival anymore, that's need. Episode 6 places everyone back inside a familiar pattern. A fortress under threat, the unit deployed to hold it, reinforcements uncertain, retreat discussed only when things are already falling apart. On the surface, nothing has changed. The system still functions the same way it always has. Send them in, hold the line, survive if possible. Even Venetim calling for backup against Xylo's wishes doesn't feel like rebellion. It feels like another version of adaptation, another way to last a little longer. But this time, the pressure doesn't just reveal how the system works. It reveals why Xylo keeps accepting it, and that's new. Episode 6 doesn't start with philosophy, it starts with pressure. The fortress is close to being overrun. The line isn't holding as cleanly as before. Retreat isn't the plan, but it becomes a possibility. And the fallback point is underground, where Venetim is stationed. Earlier, Venetim had already called for backup, even though Xylo didn't want reinforcements involved. At the time, it could be read as strategy, as caution, as another form of adapting to survive. But when the idea of retreat becomes real, when the possibility of everyone moving underground becomes immediate, drops the strategy. He says, "Don't come down here, I don't want to die." There is no manipulation in that moment, no clever framing, no layered rhetoric, just fear. And Xylo responds immediately. He tells him what we are meant to think. You only care about yourself. It's a clean accusation, and on the surface, it's correct. Venetim isn't talking about a mission. He isn't talking about civilians. He isn't talking about holding the line. He's talking about his own survival. But what makes this moment interesting isn't that Venetim is selfish, it's that he's honest about it. His fear is direct, physical, immediate. He doesn't want to die. And the episode lingers there just long enough to make that uncomfortable. Because survival has been the rule of this world from the beginning, every mission resets, every deployment expects loss, every hero adapts just enough to last a little longer. Venetim just says it out loud. He doesn't want to be the one who gets crushed when the system collapses. And when Xylo calls him selfish, it feels justified. But it also plants a quiet question. If Venetim's fear is about losing his life, what is Xylo actually afraid of losing? The battle doesn't stabilize after that. Backup doesn't instantly fix the situation. The fortress isn't magically secured. The pressure keeps building. Enemies push further in, the line thins out, and Xylo is forced deeper into the fight than he's been in previous missions. Up until now, Xylo has operated with control. He calculates, he holds Teoritta back, he treats her power like something that has to be rationed carefully. Not for glory, not for decisive victory, just to survive. But this time, survival starts slipping. He's pushed to the brink, and instead of staying emotionally closed off, he says something he hasn't said before. He admits he feels like the goddesses. That alone is strange, because he despises them. From the beginning, he's treated goddesses as symbols of corrupt system. Powerful, yes, necessary, maybe, but still part of the machinery that turns people into disposable heroes. So when he says he feels like them, it isn't admiration, it's recognition. And then he explains why. Not because he believes in their ideals, not because he wants to be righteous, but because of something selfish. He wants to be recognized as something valuable in this broken, twisted world. That's the shift. Earlier, I said Xylo doesn't fight for recognition, that he's detached, that he's just enduring the sentence placed on him. But this confession complicates that, because enduring is passive, wanting to be seen as valuable isn't. It means he cares how this world defines him. It means the system hasn't just shaped his behavior, it's shaped his sense of worth. Venetim fears death, Xylo fears meaninglessness. Both are survival instincts, just aimed at different things. And once that's said out loud, it becomes harder to pretend Xylo is purely pragmatic. He isn't just managing damage, he's fighting to prove something, even if he hates himself for needing it. After that confession, the fight doesn't stop. Xylo isn't suddenly restored, the pressure doesn't disappear, he's still at his limit. And this is where Teoritta's role shifts. Up until now, her power has always been treated carefully, held back, saved for emergencies, used only when collapse is unavoidable. Xylo manages her strength the way someone manages limited oxygen, because he's seen what happens when a goddess is pushed too far. He's already lived through that once. But here, when he's on the verge of falling, the decision isn't framed as strategy. Teoritta doesn't wait for permission, she doesn't hesitate, she stays with him. And she pulls everything she has left, every remaining fragment of power and energy, and pours it into him. It isn't dramatic, it isn't framed like a grand sacrifice speech, it's just a choice. She refuses to let him fall, and that moment changes the emotional weight of the episode. Because Xylo just admitted he wants to be recognized as something valuable. He wants to prove that he isn't just another disposable piece in a broken system. And in this moment, Teoritta answers that without saying it directly. She doesn't see him as expendable. She doesn't treat him like a tool. She believes in him enough to risk herself. That's different from the system. The system deploys. The system replaces. The system survives by resetting. But this choice isn't about resetting. It's about trust. And maybe that's why this episode feels more human. Not because the cycle is broken, but because for the first time, the connection between them doesn't feel transactional. It feels mutual. And that complicates everything. Because if Xylo isn't just fighting to survive, and if someone already sees his worth, then the question isn't whether the system can be endured, it's whether he'll keep defining himself by it. In conclusion, Episode 6 doesn't break the system. The fortress is still under threat. The missions will continue. The heroes are still deployed the same way they have always been. Nothing structural has changed, but something internal has. Venetim says out loud that he doesn't want to die. Xylo admits he doesn't want to be meaningless, and Teoritta chooses to stand beside him anyway. Up until now, I've read this story as one about endurance, about surviving a machine that doesn't reward growth, doesn't allow rebellion, and resets the moment you think you've made progress. But episode 6 complicates that, because survival explains how they keep going, but it doesn't explain why they start needing it to matter. If Xylo truly wanted nothing but to endure, that confession wouldn't exist. If Teoritta were just a resource, that choice wouldn't land the same way. And if the system only shaped behavior, it wouldn't reach this deeply into how they see themselves. Maybe this sentence isn't just being forced to fight, maybe it's being forced to measure your worth inside a world that was never built to recognize it. And that's heavier than survival. Because death would at least be final. But wanting to matter, that's something the system can use, and something it can break.